So I'm Stephen Kettner. I am Vice President of West Volusia Audubon. We're very happy this evening to have Michael Nahirny with us. He's a management specialist with Volusia County Solid Waste. And he's going to talk to us a little bit this evening about recycling and what we can do to help reduce the waste stream that enters the landfill. So Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here tonight. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about what we do and what you can do to help us out and limit the amount of waste entering the landfill here in Volusia County. So a little bit about the Solid Waste Division. We run the day-to-day operations at the Tomoka landfill where I'm broadcasting from and the West Volusia transfer station. We provide customer service for any unincorporated customers participating in the Curbside collection program. We also handle solid waste code compliance and code enforcement. Essentially, we've got the trash police operating out of our office as well. So anything related to illegal dumping or other ordinance violations, we have officers that investigate that as well. We also do a lot of recycling education and outreach, events like this tonight. This past year, we haven't really been able to do a lot with the pandemic, but we're trying to broaden our reach and get back out there in an online mediums like this. Pretty soon, we're actually going to be coming out with a virtual landfill tour series. So stick around for that in the upcoming weeks. And you'll see yours truly in animated form, giving you a little bit of a tour of our facilities. So we have two primary goals here at the Solid Waste Division, both of which were set forth by Florida state statute. The first was the Florida Solid Waste Management Act, passed back in 1988, requiring us to reduce the amount of landfills material disposed of each year by 30%. So far, we are meeting that goal. The second is a little bit more difficult. That's House Bill 7135, setting a 75% recycling goal to be reached by the year 2020. So let's see how we're doing. So if you take a look at my chart here, you can see we create quite a bunch of garbage and recycled materials. That's nearly 1.5 million tons of waste generated each year, and just under half of it is recycled. So nearly 49% of the waste generated in Volusia County by weight is recycled. That's roughly 700,000 tons. So just to break it down a little bit, to give you an idea of what some of these numbers are coming from. So the garbage we throw away, that's equivalent to 1.4 billion pounds of garbage every year. The equivalent of 3.8 million pounds landfilled each day, or one full garbage truck dropping off every 15 minutes. That's a lot of garbage. But we're doing almost as well in terms of recycling. We're recycling just shy of 1.37 billion pounds of materials annually. That's 3.75 million pounds of materials that we're keeping out of the landfill every day, or a recycling truck worth of material about every 16 minutes or so. So some ways you can help us try and reach that 75% goal. It's simple. It's the 3 R's. We've all heard of them: reduce, reuse, and recycle. These are the best ways to limit the amount of waste entering landfills to try and reach that 75% recycling rate that all Florida counties are working towards. Going into waste reduction, these are some common things that you can do in your own home or workplace that'll help reduce waste. First is using products with less packaging. A lot of products out there now have tons of material surrounding them, whether it's toys, electronics, even food items have so much packaging nowadays, and it all ends up in the garbage. So to help, try and purchase products that use less packaging, or buy in bulk, so that way the net packaging that ends up in the trash will be a lot less than if you were to purchase single servings like pudding cups or K-cups or single serving snacks, because all of that waste that ends up in the garbage can definitely be avoided. You want to buy durable items over disposable ones, things that you can use more than once. We've all gone out to restaurants or to lunch and use disposable cups, uh, plasticware, paper plates. We want to try to avoid that. Myself and several of our employees here bring our own plates, cups, and forks from home to use every day and wash out in the sink. We try to throw out as little garbage as possible here in the office because it just ends up at the landfill outside. Other ways to do so to reduce your waste is through borrowing, renting, or sharing. Things that you'll use infrequently or only you plan on using once, don't just throw it out when you're done. Share it with someone. Keep it moving. Uh, Common things are party decorations that you'll use at a birthday and throw out, or tools and outdoor furniture for events. If you're not going to use it afterwards, give it to someone who can. Another thing is to buy used instead of new. You can find all sorts of things at your local centers like Goodwill and Habitat for Humanity, oftentimes in very good condition. I myself have my shelf of Goodwill rescues in the back there. Every one of those toys came from Goodwill and would have ended up in the garbage if someone didn't donate it. So next step, reuse. We kind of touched on that a little bit, but all sorts of items can be reused over and over again. A big thing is the library system here in Volusia County have book donation sites as well as book sales of used books. As long as it's intact, someone can get some enjoyment out of reading it or listening to a CD or DVD that you don't use anymore. You can keep them out of the garbage, support your local library system, and give people some of the entertainment that you will no longer use. Like I mentioned before, we have charity and thrift stores. Goodwill and Habitat for Humanity operate throughout Volusia. Goodwill, I believe, has over a dozen different locations in most cities here. The good thing about their services are that the funds resulting from the sale of their items actually go to support job assistance programs and housing projects here in the county. So those few items that you donate to Goodwill will generate funds that'll feed back into your local community, and you'll keep those items out of the garbage as well. They don't throw anything away at those companies. I worked for Goodwill myself in college. Anything that doesn't sell in one store is shipped to another and ultimately to their main center and sold off by the pound. Even soiled clothing ends up being ground down into feed. Electronics are recycled and broken apart in-house so they know where it's all going. And pretty much all of it has some sort of beneficial use. And of course, my favorite, garage sales, online sales, and consignment shops. I love to buy used, and I like to sell. You can regain some of your initial investment from selling these things through all of these mediums. It's a good way to make sure that everything gets used over again, and it gives you a little money in your pocket so you can buy something else you want. And the last step, recycling. So recycling is really the last step in this process on purpose. We want to reduce and reuse as much as possible because recycling is actually the least energy efficient process compared to the two. But it does serve one big beneficial purpose. It keeps these items out of the landfill and it reuses the materials again for new products. It prevents pollution from mining or production in factories of these new materials. We're reducing the amount of them entering in the landfill and just sitting there for long periods of time without having any beneficial usage. By making sure these materials are reprocessed and then buying the goods that are made from these recycled materials, you're doing your part to, as we say, close the loop. Because if none of these materials are used over again in new products, they just end up in the ground. We want to keep them in the loop as long as possible, going from new product to used to recycled and then reprocessed into new products once again. So here in Volusia County, to get into a little bit more detail about the way we recycle, we have curbside and office recycling programs. If you live in unincorporated Volusia County, we service you for curbside recycling collection, and we also service all county-operated offices for recycling as well. We also have convenient drop-off locations at all of the county-operated fire stations, as well as here at the Tomoka landfill and at the West Volusia transfer station. Some cities like Deltona no longer offer curbside programs, so we do our best to notify residents of alternatives to where they can bring their recycled materials. So right now, the collection company we have for recycling is called FCC Environmental Services. They actually just started this year, and they're doing pretty well so far. They service all of our offices, unincorporated residents, and drop-off sites. And then they bring those materials to 2 sites located in Fort Orange and Orange City, operated by Gel Recycling. They sort and process all of the recyclable materials collected from those bins. So a big question we get asked all the time is, what can I recycle? What can I put in my recycling bin? And we try to make it as simple as possible. We have here our big 5 list of recyclable items. Just to run down really quickly: glass bottles, metal cans, plastic bottles and jugs, paper, and cardboard. Just stick to these 5 items in your recycling bin, because anything else will be considered a contaminant and thrown away, and could potentially result in more useful recyclables being thrown into the landfill, and that's the last thing we want. So to go into detail about these items one by one, I'm going to be specific just to give you an idea of what we do and do not want. So glass bottles, just bottles. We don't want any other types of glass material. We don't want broken glass or dishes, windows, mirrors, anything else that's made of glass. Do not put in your bin. Just stick to your glass beverage bottles and jars. So metal cans are usually aluminum and steel. Only metal cans are acceptable. No other types of material, no scrap metal, no car parts, no silverware. Aerosol cans are taken as well, but you need to make sure you remove the plastic tops and tips from them, so that way it can be properly sorted once it gets to the facility. Plastic bottles. We're very specific about the types of plastic composition that we want in terms of plastic bottles. We only take plastic bottles coated number 1 or number 2, as these are the most common types of plastics that we're able to have reprocessed and in the most demand from providers. You'll also want to make sure that before putting them into your bin, make sure they're clean, dry, and empty, and that there isn't any other material inside of them. The last thing we want are half-full bottles of soda or half-full peanut butter jars mixed in with good clean recycling, because that means more of it will end up in the garbage. Then we get into paper products. We are not too picky about the kind of paper we take, whether it's newspapers, magazines, office paper, drawing paper, white or colored paper, even books, as long as if they're hardcover, the spines are removed and there are no covers, we can take them. You'll want to avoid things like grease or wax paper, but pretty much any other kind of paper product can go into your recycling bin. Next up is cardboard. We call it OCC, or old corrugated cardboard, or fiber. Pretty much any type of cardboard box is fine in your bin as long as it meets a couple of requirements. It can't be larger than 2 foot by 2 foot. Otherwise, it won't properly fit in the slot in the side of the recycling truck. So if it's any larger than that, like a refrigerator or appliance box, cut that down a little further and you can still put it out by the curb. You also want to make sure that it's clean. Big question we get all the time are pizza boxes. If there's grease, cheese, or anything else in that box, throw it out. But if it's clean, it can go into your recycling bin. Some of them come with liners to keep the box clean now, and if you throw out the liner, you can still recycle the box. Other times you'll have half a box that's greasy and the lid could be clean. Okay, you can cut it apart and put the clean half in the bin if you want to. Just keep your greasy, dirty, cheesy cardboard pizza boxes out of the bin. We want clean cardboard. So another related topic that I want to bring up is a phenomenon we call wish cycling. A lot of times people want to do the right thing and recycle anything they can, but then they'll look at something like a phone or a TV or batteries or something like that and say, I want this to be recycled. I know it can be recycled somehow, so I'm just going to throw it in my bin. Well, it doesn't work like that. Just because something can potentially be recycled doesn't mean it can be recycled by the curb. Anything not on that top 5 list is considered a contaminant and will be thrown away if it's in your bin. And worse, good clean recycling that goes along with it could potentially be thrown out as a consequence. So stick to those 5 items. Don't throw anything else in your curbside bin, and you'll be doing your part to keep the recycling stream clean. So now that we've covered what should go in your bin, let's look at a few things that should. I'm going to tell you right now that everything on this list, our collectors have seen in recycling bins at one point or another. I'm just going to go down this list really quick, just to give you an idea of some of the things that I myself have seen and want to warn you to definitely avoid putting in your bin. Building debris. There are so many home construction projects going on, and that material could potentially be put to a good use, but just not in your bin. Yard waste as well. There are processors that can recycle wood and tree debris, but just not in your bin by the curbside. Batteries are definitely something to keep out of your bin, as they could potentially ignite and catch fire inside of recycling trucks. I've actually seen before a waste per recycling truck within the last few months burst into flames here at the landfill because there were batteries thrown in someone's recycling bin. Industrial glass products like car windows, plexiglass, mirrors, crystal cookware. Like I mentioned before, we just want to stick to glass bottles. All of these other glass products can't be safely processed in our current recycling line. Styrofoam and plastic bags. Those are some big things that a lot of people throw in their bin as well. Styrofoam, though it is based around plastic, can't be easily processed. Once it gets into the recycling truck, it literally falls to pieces. And in the end, when the recycling is dumped, we're just left with a pile of debris that has to be swept away. Plastic bags, we refer to them here as tanglers. When they're on the recycling sorting line, they get tangled up in the machinery, and they will literally need to stop the plant for hours at a time if too many bags get jammed up in the works. Another thing to avoid is hazardous waste like oil, paint, prescriptions, pesticides, needles. All of that stuff is hazardous to the workers and can't go into the recycling truck either. Diapers and clothing. Most people would think that it's a given that you shouldn't put clothes or diapers in your bin, but we have seen it. So please don't do it. Electronic waste as well. Though they have potentially recyclable components, those cannot go in your curbside recycling bin. Scrap metal as well. It is in demand as a potentially recyclable product, just not in the curbside program. There are facilities out there that will take your scrap metal and pay you for it, but you can't put it into your recycling bin. And of course, other household items, toys, coat hangers, appliances, silverware, pots and pans, All that stuff has potentially recyclable material in it, just not in your curbside bin. So please avoid putting that into your bin at all costs. So now that I've told you what not to put in your bin, let's go over some ways you can dispose of it alternatively. Hazardous waste like oil, gasoline, pesticides, chemicals can all be disposed of here at the landfill or at the West Volusia transfer station. We have a free hazardous waste drop-off for residents. So if you want to bring in your fluorescent light bulbs, batteries, electronics, paint, chemicals, pesticides, anything that's potentially hazardous like that can be brought there at no charge. We even have what's called a paint exchange, meaning you can take paint that other residents have dropped off if you want to use it for yourself. Like I said, there's no charge for this service, but it is restricted to residents only. So any businesses with commercial hazardous waste are prohibited from using the facility. However, we do accept both residential and commercial wastes at both sites in terms of household garbage, construction debris, yard waste, furniture, tires, what have you. Residents can even drop off up to 4 tires for free each Saturday, rather than having to pay the fee during the week. So some other ways that you can dispose of some common waste streams that we see, things like needles, lancelets, diabetic testing strips, all of those can be disposed of at Florida Department of Health offices. We have a list of sites on our website. You just need to make sure that you drop them off in approved red medical sharps containers. Firearms, ammunition, medication, all of that can be turned into your local sheriff's department. Just give them a call, and sometimes they may will send a deputy out to you to take it. Other times they'll have a site recommended where you can bring it. Plastic bags can be dropped off at all of your local grocery stores. At least Walmart, Publix, Winn-Dixie, and all of the major chains will have recycling bins out front specifically for plastic bags. Though we can't handle it by the curbside, they're essentially shipping it back to the manufacturer. So your plastic bags will be made into new plastic bags straight from the source. Car batteries, motor oil, antifreeze, and other automotive fluids have drop-off bins at most auto parts stores like AutoZone, Advanced Auto Parts, and O'Reilly's. In some cases, they will also take back auto parts you've previously purchased there for a turn-in fee. In terms of full-blown automobiles, larger parts, and scrap metal, there are recycling centers throughout the county that will take these. We actually have a recycling center pamphlet that we give out at all of our events that I will forward onto the email here afterwards, so you guys can get a copy of this as well as the presentation when we've completed. And then, of course, like we mentioned earlier, things like furniture, appliances, and other household items are great for donation at Goodwill and Habitat for Humanity. It's a great way to pass them along to someone else, and it keeps them out of the landfill. So that's pretty much it for our presentation. We have a lot of other local affiliates that we're involved with too, in case you're interested in getting more involved. We host the Keep Volusia County Beautiful chapter of Keep America Beautiful. We have our Volusia Recycles Recycling Education Campaign, where we provide presentations like this, tours, and community events as well. We actually have an event coming up next month. It's the over in Ponce Inlet, over at the state park. So if you're interested in coming out and seeing some other environmental vendors, we'll be there too, giving out some of our promotional items made of recycled materials. And last but not least, our Adopt a Road program. If you're interested in picking up litter along county maintained roadways, you can sign a contract with us, and you'll actually get a road sign with the name of you or your group, as long as you commit to pick up waste and help do your part to keep the county beautiful. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us by phone. Our office is open on Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, or check out our website. It's volusia.org/recycle. So now that we've finished up with the main presentation, I'm here to take questions if you want to put them into the chat box. And I believe Megan was going to ask me if we have any questions here, and I'll do my best to answer them.
All right, so Michael, near the beginning of the presentation, a question came in related to, for the trash that is recycled, for the items that are recycled, what is the cost or savings per ton? Cost and or savings per ton, if you know that information.
So I'm going to say something that not a lot of people like to hear. It costs more to recycle than to dispose of waste. Right now, Volusia County pays $80 per ton to have materials recycled. That's the same throughout counties through most of Florida right now. Versus for garbage to be landfilled, the cost is around $35 per ton. So we're paying to have the materials recycled because it's the right thing to do. And that fee is incorporated into the annual charge for all residents. But right now, we're not seeing any sort of profit from our recycling. The vendor uses that $80 per ton to fund their operations, and any money that they make off the recyclables is just a little bit of icing on the cake. Now, we do receive a reimbursement for our paper and fiber from them, sort of like a discount on the service for what they can sell, but we're not seeing any direct profit from it.
Okay, thank you. The next question that came in is related to what happens to the recyclable material since China has stopped taking it? And then
Okay.
the individual goes on to say there was previously a contractor that handled it, and much, if not all of it, was sold.
So I'm going to try and address the full question from the beginning in terms of, say, China no longer taking it. There is a reason behind that, and that goes into our whole presentation of what not to put in your bin. The reason they stopped taking it is because the recycling was so heavily contaminated that they were essentially paying to root through garbage themselves, and the last thing they wanted was to turn their country into a landfill. So they stopped taking our recycling, which means prices to process it went up here, and we needed to find alternative markets. The vendor that we use has contracts both here in the United States and well as in other countries. Most of the aluminum and steel, for example, stays within the United States because it's used in the automobile and aircraft industry, and scrap metal and other metal materials are always in high demand. Cardboard is in high demand as well, especially during the pandemic. A lot more people are doing online purchases and they need that material to make cardboard boxes for the mail. Paper is also in demand as well. Chinese companies have actually invested in firms over here in the United States to open up paper mills that can take that material, repurpose it into pulp, and then ship it to China, because when it's no longer considered a waste product, it's able to be exported there safely and outside of their recycling ban. So while the fact that China's not taking it is definitely a blow, it is still getting put to beneficial use, whether here in the United States or overseas. We just needed to find alternative places to take it.
All right, thank you. I think that addressed the entirety of that question. We have another one that libraries, this was related to your reduce and reuse component of the presentation, that libraries, at least in the Ormond Library, suspended taking books in the early days of COVID-19. Do you happen to know if they've resumed taking them?
I don't know if they've resumed taking them at this point. You'd have to reach out to the local branch of the library to see. I wasn't aware of that myself, but thank you for whoever posted the question of letting us know. That's definitely something I'll look into before our next presentations. But if you are having difficulty with your local branch library, there are still used bookstores that are open throughout the county. We actually have a waste resource guide that we send out to residents upon request. So if they're interested in a full list of used bookstores operating in the county, I can send that list out to them as well.
Thank you. Yes, we have another comment that says there is a sign that says no donations. I assume that's referring to that same library. So
Okay.
yeah, so that link will probably be useful to multiple people. We do have quite a few more questions here, kind of getting into the specifics on what to recycle or what not to recycle. We have a question, why are we not recycling number 5 plastics?
The main reason is lack of demand. The higher the number of plastic, essentially the less pure it is. Plastics 1 and 2 are what you'll see in your beverage bottles, mostly like your milk jugs, your soda bottles, stuff like that. If you notice, it's very clear or slightly opaque. The higher numbers tend to be darker plastics diluted with other materials. So when you have a lower grade of plastic, it's not suited for the initial use of other plastics, like say for soda bottles or common clear or lightly opaque containers. They can't make that plastic any lighter after it's darker, and they can't get the other pigments and materials out of it. So plastics 5 and up are considered the lowest grade and have the lowest demand. Plastics coated, say 7, for example, are literally classified as any other plastic. And it means anything with any touch of plastic in it could be coded as plastic 7. And just because it has a plastic numerical code on it doesn't necessarily mean we have a market for it or are able to recycle it curbside. So while we did take other types of plastics when there was a market for it, we have had to scale back in recent years due to lack of demand.
Okay, thank you. And then, so just to confirm, I did hear you say this during the presentation, I think, but just have a question. Is it correct that Deltona is no longer recycling?
Last time I've checked, their program was suspended. As far as I know, it hasn't been reinstated yet. That was a decision made by the city rather than the county. The county, like I mentioned earlier, services all the unincorporated areas, but each city, anywhere within the city limits of the municipalities, cover their own recycling and curbside collection programs and have their own separate contracts and providers. City of Deltona, for example, currently uses Waste Pro, and Waste Pro operates their own recycling centers and waste transfer stations. So it may not necessarily have been economical for the city to continue their program if they are facing a higher cost like everyone else. So even if they were getting the same rates we were on recycling, say $80 per ton charge to process it, it may have made more sense for them financially to landfill it instead if their budget couldn't accommodate for it. But yeah, as far as I know, they're not currently recycling, and I don't know if they have plans to continue once again, but that's definitely a question that you should pose to your local city council to see if there's any chance of the program being reinstated.
Mm-hmm. And kind of building off of that topic, there is a question, where would Deltona residents bring their recycling, the closest place?
So the closest places are in DeLand, so you're looking at a little bit of a drive. We have our free drop-off bins at the West Volusia transfer station and a couple of the county fire stations as well. There are also several private recycling centers operating in DeLand as well. For that full list, I have a pamphlet that I'll actually send out to you, and you can send it out to the participants if they're interested. And that'll show them everywhere that you can potentially recycle here in the county.
Okay, thank you. And then, so another question, why do cities not recycle glass, and how can we get our cities to recycle glass again?
Okay, yeah, that's a very good question. Like I mentioned just a moment ago, due to the high cost of recycling at the moment, cities are looking for ways to cut costs. And because recycling contractors charge by the weight of the material, they want to reduce the amount of weight of their recycling to reduce their cost. Glass by far is a lot heavier than several of the other materials. And right now there isn't a huge market for glass. Right now, it costs less to produce new glass bottles than it does to recycle old glass into new bottles. The county still accepts glass because we have an alternate use for it. It is ground down into sand and used as landfill cover for the daily basis. So while it's not dumped in the landfill, is used to cover up the material each day. So while it's not necessarily being recycled in the traditional sense, it does have a beneficial secondary use. So to get your cities to start recycling glass again, they would either most likely have to raise fees on residents or find some sort of alternate use for it. One of the big things now that a lot of cities are doing is starting that glass crushing program like the county does. There are actually bottle crushing machines that a number of cities outside of Volusia have taken, and they will literally just crush those glass bottles down into sand and use them in municipal road projects. Another thing is for beach restoration. If you can get a good clean amount of sand from that bottle crushing, you can use it for all sorts of things. Just they would need to have an initial investment and find a way to fund the process.
All right, thank you. We have a question about commercial and on the individual level composting in Volusia County. So I actually might be able to help out with this, but I wanted to pose this question to you, Michael, about composting.
Okay, I'm not an expert on composting, but I'll do my best. And if I don't get it, I'll definitely refer it to you. So
Okay.
go ahead and let me know.
All right.
I think I lost you for a second.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I was thinking you were going to give it a shot first. So I can speak on the individual level, because I also work for Volusia County in the Green Volusia program. For anybody who's unfamiliar with me, that's my role when I'm working. I'm off currently, but yeah. So generally speaking, Green Volusia and the county and through that program actively encourages composting at the individual level. It's a great way to divert waste from the landfill and simultaneously you can build really great healthy soil that you can use on your landscape through composting. So that could be just a whole nother program, I think, with the do's and don'ts of composting. But generally speaking, that is something that the county does actively definitely encourage at the individual level. So commercial composting, as far as I'm aware, we don't have I can say we don't have a commercial composting facility in the county. And so it becomes problematic with the compostable plastics because those actually require a commercial composting process in order to fully break those down. Michael, are you able to add on that at all?
Only a little bit, just to say, yeah, you're right. There aren't currently any commercial composting companies here in Volusia. Most of them are out of county or such a fair distance that we can't really offer a curbside program for it either. The closest county I know of that actually does do it is the city of Orlando, because they have a commercial grade composting facility just outside of the city that will actually collect it for the residents. But yeah, unfortunately, we don't have any contractors nearby that would be able to process the compost, and getting a program started here at the landfill would be a huge budget item that we're not able to fund at the moment. But we do definitely recommend it at the residential level. Use beneficial compost in your own lawns and gardens. We do have, I believe we have actually your do's and don'ts list on our website at the moment. So if anyone wanted to check our website, volusia.org/recycle, we should have a link for some helpful composting tips if you were looking for a little additional information about it.
Thank you. Yeah, I can work on making sure that information is spread out as well. Okay, so we have a couple more questions about plastics 1 and 2, the lids on those items, or things that are not jugs or bottles, but are plastics 1 and 2. Can you address that?
Yeah. So for most of those plastic bottles, even if the plastic bottle itself is coated 1 or 2, the lid isn't necessarily going to be the same type of material. If at all possible, take the lids off of your bottles and throw them out. If not, it's not mandatory. Because the lids are attached to the bottles, they are going to get crushed and ground down with them when they're processed. But it's just a small bit of plastic compared to the rest of the material, that it's not a huge contaminant and it's manageable. So if you want to take your plastic bottle lids off, feel free to do so if you want to help us out. If not, you can leave them on there. Our main thing is we just want to make sure that it's clean, dry, and empty more than anything else.
Okay, thank you. All right, so moving down the list here, we have a person here asking about steam fusion, which makes building blocks like cement blocks, can be used for garages, sheds, shelters, and plastics of all types can be used and don't even have to be clean. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, there are commercial organizations out there that are making use of those types of materials. It's just a matter of if we had someone local capable of doing it. We research all types of avenues for recycling and waste diversion, but when it comes down to it, it needs to be affordable both at the county level and for our local residents, and we would need someone close by capable of implementing it. So while it is a potential end goal for the material that it could be used beneficially for, it's just not something that we're capable of implementing at the moment.
Okay, thank you. So we have a question, what is plastic being repurposed for in general?
So essentially, plastic is turned into any number of everyday products. Sometimes it'll be converted back into plastic bottles. Other times it'll be used in other items like single-use plastics or home goods. Because what will end up happening is when the plastic bottles get to the plant here at Shell Corporation, they'll bundle those up into pallets and they're sold off as a commodity to dealers who want to use them to make products. So any company that you can think of that makes goods with plastic could potentially buy it and use it in their products. It's then typically melted down and then turned into pellets or other materials that's used as the groundwork to create these new products. So if you can think of anything with plastic in it, that's potentially what this is used for. An interesting thing that a lot of people don't think about with plastic is that it isn't necessarily used for hard plastics. Anyone with polyester clothing, well, you're wearing essentially the same material that your soda bottle is made of. Plastic bottles can be ground down into thin bristles and strips and used in polyester clothing or other materials like canvas, and used beneficially for that as well. So yeah, there are all sorts of uses for plastic after it's been recycled.
Awesome, thank you. And then, so we have this might have been addressed already. Someone says they've been told by Waste Pro to leave caps on bottles for recycling. And then the second component of this question is, what about metal lids left on glass jars?
Okay, so Waste Pro, they're contracted with several of the cities. So if they are your service provider, it means that you're located in city limits and our curbside guidelines won't necessarily apply 100% to you. We tend to have fairly similar guidelines to Waste Pro, but like some cities don't take glass, others will have different ways that they process their plastics. So if Waste Pro tells you to do it and you live within city limits, then definitely do it because, like I said, their program might be a little bit different than ours. As for metal lids on jars, you'll want, if Waste Pro tells you to do it, you can leave them on. But if for anyone who's serviced by the county, we want you to take those off because, like I mentioned, our glass is ground down into sand and used as landfill cover beneficially. But the last thing we want is metal caps getting stuck into that machinery because it tends to mess with the process quite a bit. And the last thing we want are jar lids turning into shrapnel. So if at all possible, if you're serviced by the county, definitely remove metal lids and other types of lids from your glass bottles and jars and throw those out into your regular garbage can.
All right, thank you. Someone says that Amazon's bubble envelopes say they can be put in with regular recycling. Is this true and will you take them?
So that's a bit of a misnomer. Amazon likes to put that all of their packaging is recyclable, and it is technically recyclable, just not here in our curbside program. We do not have the ability to process that type of material. In a lot of major cities, they can, but not here in Volusia. So regular paper envelopes we can take, and potentially even padded envelopes if the padding is removed and it's just paper. But no, we can't take those in your curbside bin.
All right, and then sorry if this has already been addressed, I'm kind of juggling things, but can you recycle plastic 1 and 2 if not a bottle, for example, a food container?
Yes, as long as it's coated plastic 1 or 2, we can take it. You'll find things like Gladware or other Tupperware stuff like that. As long as it's that same clear light plastic as the plastic soda bottles and milk jugs, coated 1 or 2, we can take it. Well, you just want to avoid other types of single-use plastics.
Okay, great. And then what types of food containers and cups can restaurants use in Volusia County that could be recycled by customers?
So if you're going with plastic cups, then it would just be 1s and 2s. Those cups would have to be either clear or slightly opaque, but most restaurants will go with glass cups or higher numbered plastics, which we aren't able to process. Same thing with the plates and plasticware. It's just not a type of material we're able to use. But hey, if you can get a restaurant that will use 1s and 2s in their plastic, then yeah, sure, it can go in your bin. Just not a lot of them are doing it right now. Most of them will use the single-use plastics, paper plates, styrofoam plates, coated wax paper cups, and we're just not able to process them.
All right, thank you. So we have a couple more lids questions. I don't know if these came in before or after the last ones, but this person says, I never know if I should take the lid off or leave it on. Are they numbers 1 and 2? Are the lids on number 1 and 2 bottles also 1 and 2 plastic? And then a comment, I heard that caps could explode in people's faces at the recycling facility, so I usually take them off.
So like I mentioned a little while ago, the plastic lids aren't plastic 1 and 2. So if at all possible, yes, please remove them from your bottles. But I'm not going to go as far as to say it's mandatory. We can take them on the plastic bottles, and there is a small chance that they could pop off during the sorting and crushing process. And that could be a danger, but not more so than any of the other items in the facility. So that's a yes and no. Yes, take them off if possible. No, it's not mandatory, but it would be nice. And no, they can't technically be recycled in our program. So like I said, if at all possible, take them off.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, so we have a question. Is Volusia County looking into a commercial composting facility? I think you kind of mentioned this, but you know, if you want to elaborate at all on this.
We've looked at it tentatively, meaning very, very preliminary research into it. For most recycling and composting streams, you need a commercial provider that has their own facility set up and is established. The major issue with setting up commercial composting here in Volusia is that all of the composting vendors are so far away. The last thing we want is to send your compost 100 miles away to be processed and add on that huge cost to the residents. So at the moment, composting at the small local level in your backyard is recommended, as that's the best use for it. That's going to waste the least amount of resources in terms of fuel and processing, trying to get it somewhere where it can be done so en masse.
We have a comment, please do this. So we will, continue forward with trying to find resources for that. There is a question, what is the name of the company in Orlando that does commercial composting? Do you happen to know?
I'm not honestly aware of what their name is. I've been to meetings with people from Orlando for regional recycling efforts. I just know that they have the contract at the moment. Because they had a local provider, they actually had a program where they were able to provide their residents with compost containers. Because there were relatively few residents participating, they could even schedule pickups with the vendor directly. I just don't have that name, But if you wanted to look into the City of Orlando website, I believe they have more information about their composting program there, as well as contact information for their local solid waste office, and they might be able to give you some more details.
Awesome, thank you. We have just a handful of questions left here. There is one comment to that there is biodegradable cat litter out there. There's a brand called World's Best that is made out of corn cobs rather than fired clay, and it is sold at Publix. So just to put that out there to everybody. So another question here, is Volusia County trying to attract recycling businesses?
So we're not actively working to attract businesses, mainly because there are a number of recycling contractors that already work in the area. Gel Corporation, like I mentioned, has 2 sites in Volusia. I believe in Edgewater, their contractor is also a local company that's privately owned. There are at least a dozen different private recycling centers throughout the county that residents can go to. Even commercial construction demolition debris recyclers in the county as well. So there are quite a number of private recyclers out there, just not a lot of people know about them. That's one of the reasons why we publish our recycling center pamphlet and hand it out at all of our events. It's because not a lot of people know that these places exist, and we want to get the word out. So like I mentioned earlier, I will definitely send that out after the completion of the presentation, so you can see for yourself how many companies already operate around here.
Awesome, thank you. There are a couple of comments I want to make sure I include here. There's a website called my.freecycle.org. That's a website where you can list items that you want to give away. Then another comment here that seems like a composting facility for Volusia County could be lucrative for the county with making compost for plants or agriculture. So a couple of comments there. And then we have a question. This person says, I understand about lids, but grocery stores package lots of fruits and side dishes in number 1 and 2 plastics, but I thought you said only plastic jugs or bottles. Could you clarify that, please, Michael?
Yeah, so those types of plastic containers we can take. I know exactly what you're talking about for things like strawberries and other fruits and vegetables will often come in those clear plastic 1 and 2 containers. Yes, those we can take as well because we're easily able to sort them and they're easily processed like the plastic bottles. We just put plastic bottles in our top 5 for simplicity's sake because they're the most common items that have plastics 1 and 2. We want to try and avoid confusion. But yes, if it's coated 1 or 2 plastics and it's a food container for, say, fruits and vegetables, yeah, that can go in your bin as well. We're just doing our best to try and avoid the higher numbered plastics that we can't process.
All right. We have a question. Are the various kinds of tape and mailing labels on cardboard boxes a problem if they're left on?
No, that should be fine. Now, if you've got a box that's covered head to toe in tape, obviously you're not going to want to put that in your recycling bin. But if it's just taped around the borders or has a couple of labels on it, that's fine. It's a small level of contamination, and the plants that process cardboard are used to dealing with it. So as long as it's not a huge excessive amount of tape, we can handle it, no problem.
Awesome. And one last question here. Do we have any local effort to encourage Publix, et cetera, to cut down on their use of plastic?
So there aren't any local efforts that I'm aware of, but that tends to go more towards state level regulation. We don't really have the ability at the local level right now, aside from lobbying your local city or county council members. That stuff tends to take hold at a higher level than us here. Now, I will say that Publix, from what I know, is actually working pretty well to try and reduce their waste. The county actually files a report about recycling and solid waste generated in the county to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection each year. And Publix actually submits their information to them voluntarily every year, letting them know about their efforts. And a huge amount of recycling takes place through Publix. Aside from their plastic bags, they recycle egg cartons, They recycle cardboard boxes in the back. They recycle their used cooking oil and a number of other materials. All of that information gets reported to the state each year. And as far as I know, they're working to try and improve a little bit at a time.
Awesome, thank you. So a couple of comments here. And one question here about what are you doing to promote composting food waste? Maybe this is directed at me. I'll make sure that I include some resources for everybody in the follow-up email as well about composting. So that's something that can be done on the individual level. So it's kind of just, I guess the Green Volusia approach is just, I have a presentation at work that I give about how to compost. And usually it's folded in with information about Volusia County's fertilizer ordinance and how composting can kind of, take the place of, fertilizing landscape plants and things like that. So, but I'll definitely just make sure that in one way or another, we have some composting resources go out to everybody. So then we have a couple more comments here. One is that Volusia County also has a volunteer monofilament or fishing line recycling program. And it's the white bin at each boat ramp. So make sure that if you wish to volunteer, call Volusia County Environmental Management to sign up for that. And then Publix takes bubble wrap packaging besides plastic bags, and also they take clean styrofoam for recycling out front, someone says as well.
Mhm.
And then we have a question, is there a Facebook page or anywhere that citizens can go to get together and help to make Volusia and its citizens more environmentally conscious?
Not that I'm aware of. There may be some private groups out there that have their own Facebook pages for it, but right now the county doesn't operate a page, and I'm not aware of any local groups that do myself. But there are definitely groups promoting green initiatives. For example, the last presentation I did was for the Garden Club of DeLand. They wanted to get the information out there to their members. And the best thing I can say is if you want to get the word out there, or you have other groups that you want to share this information with, feel free to pass it along, or reach out to me directly here. Half of my job is trying to teach people to reduce waste and recycle. And for any local groups, we've had student groups, Girl Scout troops, even groups of retirees who want to learn and do their part. And I want to teach them. So like I said, reach out to me. I'll go ahead and pass along my contact information by email as well. So if anyone's interested, we're trying to do our best to get out there, especially in these pandemic times. Even if it's in a virtual medium, we want to share the information with as many people as possible.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, and just to add on to that, Volusia County Environmental Management does have some resources as well out there for individuals. And then there's also a group called, this is in the chat here, Dream Green Volusia. So Dream Green Volusia is also on Facebook, and they are working on reducing single-use plastic waste in Volusia County. So that's that is a organization of Volusia County residents, it seems, that are gathering together in that pursuit as well. And then we have a comment. I know that UPS stores will take clean bubble wrap as well, maybe styrofoam peanuts. And then we have a lot of comments, Michael, saying thank you, you are awesome, and we really appreciate this. This was very, very informative, and thank you for your work.
Well, I appreciate you all listening to me and all of the questions. We want to try and have as little confusion as possible. So like I said, at any time, if anyone's out there who wants to learn more or has a group that they want to talk with to me, feel free, reach out. I'm here 5 days a week. And like I said, we want to do our part to help.